Cheryl Hunter is an author, speaker, and high performance coach who has coached and led personal development programs for over 86,000 people since 1998. She is author of this book, Use It, in which she shares her extraordinary personal story from leaving rural Colorado as an 18-year-old for the bright lights of Europe. And I'm going to let her tell the rest of her story because it is such an extraordinary story. Cheryl, welcome and thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you for being here and asking me to be here with you, rather. I'm just, for the first moment that you and I connected via email, I thought there's something really important about the people that speak, are your audience, girls. I mean, that's you and I at one point, and I think there's nothing more important than that formulative age, when you're just growing up and everything's possible for you. And I think, like, if with you guys watching, when if you can hold on to that space of everything, anything and everything being possible, it really can be true for you. So I thought, yay, what a cool opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And what you've just said then is just the perfect segue into my first question, because you have experienced some of the most feared and dreaded experiences a girl or a woman can face, and you've overcome. You've come through triumphantly, and you've even put those experiences to your advantage. So if we can start with the most confronting first, would you please share the innocent vision and then the shocking experiences that you had way back then as an 18-year-old that started you on this journey?
Sure. As a teenager, I lived in a really, really remote place and growing up as well, just in the mountains of Colorado on a horse ranch. And I thought, I gotta get out of here. As much as I loved it, it seemed like the fact that I couldn't see any houses or any buildings or anything as far as the eye could see. I thought that's a prison as well as it being beautiful and awesome. But it was like that. It was started to confine me, and I thought I had to get out. And so I used to hop on my mini bike and ride wherever. But I rode down to the store that was about an hour and a half away, round trip, and picked up a magazine, and they were talking about, oh, they need models. And I thought, huh, well, I'm on the boys basketball team. I guess I'm tall enough. Well, I'm gonna do that, because then nobody could contend with my plan about getting out of Colorado. I mean, they don't need models in Rye, Colorado. So I was like, here I go. And I talked my friend into going with me, and we got a bunch of jobs to save up. I was a lifeguard, and I worked as a gas station attendant in the bulletproof booth at night times, which my parents were not thrilled about. But anyway, I was just like, I gotta come up with money. So anyway, we get our Eurail passes, we get our tickets, we're going to Europe. That's the big glamorous place. I'll figure it out there, Once I get into big cities, I'll figure it out. So we get over there. I got to France, and this man with a big, really fancy schmancy camera around his neck comes up and goes, "Hey, are you a model?" And I'm like, it's that easy to become a model in France? Oh my God, I should have come here sooner. And he says, if you come with me and my friend, then we'll make you a model. And I mean, if I tell the truth about it, the guy was creepy. And my friend that I went with, she was like, no way, over my dead body, are you going with that creepy dude? But I thought, if I don't go with them, I'll never be able to leave Rye, Colorado. I'll have to go back at the end of this very short trip, and then I'll stay there on that ranch rotting away forever. And so I just went, and they drugged me and took me to an abandoned construction site and held me there for days, and they beat me and raped me. And I made a vow to myself when I was there. I said, if I get out of this, I mean, I didn't know if I would live or die. I mean, I'd seen their faces. And I thought, if I get out of this, I have to do something. I have to do something with my life. I mean, I was 18. I hadn't done anything yet, really. And I mean, from little things, like I remember I used to love going to the mall with my grandma. That was like the thing, to go out and go to the mall. And she would always try to hold my hand, and I'd be like, my God, stop holding my hand. My friends might see me, like, and I thought, I will never do that again. I will hold my grandma's hand. And my little brother was always, being my little brother. He was kind of like pesky because he was young, and my sister the same way, always wanted to borrow my clothes. I'm like, no. And I thought, I'm going to be nice to my brother and sister. And I'm gonna do something. And ultimately, as life turns out, like life, you talk to adults, they're like, how did you get here? And it's kind of like a very weird change of events. Who knew what that chain would lead to? But it just does. It works out. And ultimately, I had wanted to really get out in the world and be able to speak to people. And the odd thing is, this abduction has allowed me to do that. I mean, I wrote a book about it, for Pete's sake. I speak to a lot of people in schools or businesses, and you never know where the sucky things in life might lead you, It's like, you
Yeah.
never know.
No, and that's
Try
absolutely the theme of your book, your work, and this interview. Because when I read your book and when I watched the TED talk you gave, I was just so captivated by your story and how you've taken this experience that's so confronting, and so many people use it to put themselves in a box for the rest of their lives, and instead you've used it to absolutely transform and grow and express your greatest potential. So, I salute you, Cheryl. I think
Thank you.
that's, just such a wonderful thing. And what you were saying about then those thoughts that how you would behave differently with your family if you came through this sort of thing, was that part of what got you through the actual experience of being raped and abused like that? Like, how did you get I've always wondered this, how did you physically
Yeah.
get through that horrifying experience?
Well, at the very moment, like that, those things were going on. I mean, at first, like when they were kicking me in the head and stuff, and I mean, just like I found myself naturally curled up in the fetal position, and you hear about that, like people, oh, I was in the fetal position. But I mean, I was just like in a ball, and I was like, oh, what else do you do? You don't ever plan for something like that, but then. I remember my grandma told me this story when she was a little girl. My grandma's appendix burst. And she had told me this story. It was like folklore in our family. When her appendix burst, they thought she was going to die, because usually this was, 1,000 years ago, but back in those days when your appendix bursts, or even now, I guess, but they think you're going to die. You don't live through that. So my grandma was Catholic, and they came and gave her last rites over her body. And like you do when you die. And she said she had this sensation of floating up above her body. And she said she, to this day, will say she was looking at everybody in the room from up above her body, watching the doctor give her, or the doctor try to save her, and the priest give her last rites. And her mother was weeping, and her father was, doing, what they were doing. And I thought, I'm going to do it like my grandma did. I'm going to leave my body. And so I just was like, I'm just floating around. I'm just floating around. I'm not really here. I mean, how else? I mean, like I said, you don't premeditate something like that, but it just came back to me about my grandma floating around on the roof or the ceiling. And I was trying to do that. And then as I was just like looking around, looking at anything else, like, I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm not here. I saw this speck of light on the wall. And it had been dark in there. It was like this construction site, and there was I didn't know if it was day or night, whatever. But there was this like little tiny speck of light on the wall. And I was staring at it and staring at it, and I thought, I'm going to become that by staring at it. And I don't know what that is, but whatever it is that's making that light is out here is free. And the harder I stared at it, the more I felt I am this little piece of light. I am not this girl being torn to shreds by this crazy demonic wolf man on top of her. I am this little speck of light that could just go flink, flink, flink and fly away any time. And it's like, I don't know what the mind really does. I'm no psychologist, psychiatrist. I don't know anything about that. But people find amazing ways to cope through anything. And then later on, years later, I was reading Man's Search for Meaning about Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps in World War II, and his whole entire family was killed. His young wife, his parents, his brothers, just the whole family. And I thought, God, what I've been through, that's nothing compared to what other people deal with. I mean, people deal with horrors. And then, to each of us, we deal with stuff every day that's like, oh, that's a bummer. Oh, that's a drag. But it doesn't have to be like big or big or small on a scale. It's things impact each of us every day that are bad and hard and difficult to go through. So it's like, really, when I got through, ultimately, I wanted to make a difference for other people. I didn't think about this then, but who are confronting difficult circumstances and challenges in their life. I know that's a long answer, but I realized it had to be for something. That I got through this had to be for something.
Thank you for your long answer. I mean, that was a great answer, and it was an amazing experience that was so confronting. And so it's interesting to hear how you actually got through it. And, you understandably hid this experience from your family and friends. You pretended it hadn't happened at first, and you sort of suppressed it because you felt guilty and ashamed, all of that sort of thing. So what happened that enabled you to see it differently?
Well, I, initially, like you said, I didn't tell anybody. I mean, I was there with my friend, and we were at that age where you kind of just don't talk about stuff. And I realized as it came up to my mind, I just pushed it down. And not talking about it was the only way I could think of to cope. I mean, I was a teenager, no offense to teenagers, but I just didn't know how else. I didn't know how else to cope. And then life became bearable when I didn't think about it and because I wasn't talking about it. So then years later, I went on this journey of healing, really, like to get back to the surface, to normal. I kind of felt like I was underwater. I would dream like I was being held down underwater, and I would have to be swimming, trying to get up to the surface. And I feel like that's what my journey did. If somebody told me about a great book, I would read it every single time. If they told me about a therapist, I would go. I went to, her, him, whatever. People told me about courses and seminars. I took every single one. I just was like, whatever would present itself, that's what I would do. And eventually I got to a place where I thought, gosh, I just felt like I was given so much life by doing these seminars that I thought, I'm going to train myself to lead them just for the heck of it, just to see. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, but just to see. And then I started leading them, and it was like, man, it was undeniable that I felt more alive, and I wasn't thinking about my problems because I was empowering other people in their commitments. And other people were given life. I was given life, and I thought, this is it. This is what I was born to do. And through that circuitous turn of events, it led me there. But to answer your question, the specific moment, there was a woman at the front of the room, and she was talking about her life, and I had been presenting this seminar and talking about that you can forgive anything and move on from anything. And she stood up and she's like, no, it's no. You can't, not anything, no. And she'd come from a country that there was genocide and genital mutilation and like horrible things done to people. And then she came to America with her husband, who had physically abused her, sexually abused the children. I mean, you could understand why she's saying you can't forgive certain things. And yet I was taking a stand, and I said, you actually can. And I'm not talking about for them. I'm saying for you. Forgive these things so you could live again. Because for me, I got to a point where I realized that I had gotten really hard for a while. It's not like I just go, hey, I'm going to help people. I've been abducted. Goody. No, I was like, men are terrible. Men are mean. I'm going to be taken advantage of. Everywhere I go, people are trying to take advantage of me. Like you kind of go down one of two roads after something bad happens. And I finally had to talk to myself and said, no way. I got to go on that road. I got to really the high road. I got to take that road. So Anyway, this woman is at the front of the room talking, and I had realized for myself that if I didn't forgive those men, it was like it continued to happen every day because I was dragging the past around with me. And so I was saying some version of that, but not saying anything personal in any way. And in the room started to shift. Like there were people at the back of the room who were like throwing notebooks down and getting up and walking around the back of the room. A couple people got really ticked off and got up and actually left. Like it was starting to turn. They were starting to side with her. And, understandably, she'd been through a lot. But I kept saying, no, you can forgive anything. And finally, I realized I'm going to either lose the room or I'm going to give it up and just share what happened. And I shared my story. It's the first time I'd ever said it aloud. It's the first time I'd ever said it. And I mean, it was years later. And you could have heard a pin drop. But more importantly, like everybody milling around sat down and everybody, all that worked up energy calmed. And most importantly, the woman just burst into tears as she saw something possible, a flicker of what her life could be if she no longer hated him, if she no longer hated her country, if she no longer hated, if she could in fact embrace forgiveness as a way to set herself free. And then I realized, what good does it do truly if I've gone through this experience and emerged on the other side triumphant, if it's a personal triumph? That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in growing up and getting older. It's like, if something's only about me, it doesn't matter. Like what we can give away is like, it's really it. It really makes, life is pretty short. Like, it makes life live on. And I remember like my grandparents used to say, oh, life's short. Or my parents would say that. And I'd be like, just seriously, try sitting through class one day and you'll see how short life is, like being in school. And there's times when life seems long, but it really is comparatively short. And yet a way to live on is to make a difference with other people. And I think each one of us longs for that, the opportunity to truly contribute to other people. And I think if we listen to life and go with what it's giving us, not what we want it to give us, but what it actually gives us, we have the opportunity to do just that and make a difference.
There's a really beautiful song by an American singer, Karen Taylor Good, about that, which is, I wanted strength and God gave me experiences that would, make me strong. It's an amazing song. What you've just said about forgiveness, I've been very inspired by the work of Dr. John DeMartini, who defines forgiveness. He expresses it in the form of, thank you for giving me this experience. Wow. Because how I've grown through it. Isn't that amazing?
It's so deep.
And that's just sort of right on the pulse of what you've said. It's not just about me having a nice, happy little life. It's about how can I grow and give and maximize mine and other people's potential.
I mean, forgiveness is not easy. It can be just the biggest hurdle ever.
Yeah.
But I think an access in, like a way into forgiveness, is to realize it's not ultimately about them. It's about setting yourself free.
Yes.
And being able, you can't learn from the experience or use the experience in any way if you still are hating that it occurred, if you're still not willing to accept it.
Yes. And the thing that's kind of, I guess for many people, strange about what happened for you is that you obviously don't regret that you headed off on this innocent vision to be a model, that you followed the photographer and ended up being kidnapped and abducted and abused, because you've grown so much through it and you've created a business that's now serving hundreds and thousands of people all around the world. And sometimes we do get so fixated on our pain and loss and we miss the blessings and the gifts and all of that are present in the adversity because we're just so fixated on the pain.
Life can be just so bizarre. I mean, I don't mean that as some weird euphemism for something, but like my grandma used to always say, oh, the Lord works in mysterious ways. And as soon as I grew up, I was like, heck yeah. I mean, even before I grew up, I was like, oh, you're not kidding. Holy moly. But it's, there's one of two ways to react to those things that occur to us. One is to be like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. And then you're in this victim role where life is doing it to you. And no matter what your perspective is about your own personal power and what you can accomplish in the world, if you're in a victim role by saying life is doing it to me, there's no possibility for you to be powerful and be the ruler of your life. The moment you say, no, I am going to use what life gives me and turn it into something. Like, we don't have the say over what happens. We can't do a thing about that. But what we can do is control how we respond, where we go from there. How, it's like the proverbial making lemonade out of lemons. But, like, I don't mean just like some lame cup of lemonade. I'm talking about craft a life out of what life gives you. It's not to say you can't have your own objectives. I have a lot of my own objectives and commitments, but it's like there's a way to be in a dance with what life is giving you in the face of what you're committed to that really gives you an opportunity to be related to reality like nothing else and create a life like nothing you could ever imagine. Yeah, I would never have chosen this for myself. That would be absurd. Oh yeah, I want to have that happen. But the fact that I've worked with it instead of, oh God, the world hates me. Life is unfair. I truly do. It is a gift, Liliane. It's like, it's a blessing. Crazy as that may sound, it truly, truly is.
I was going to say, with what you were just saying about use it, I was going to then refer again to your book, Use It. And it says you explain how you've used your insights from this experience to coach heaps of other people through their challenging experiences, and that you've got 3 tenets that I'd love us to visit now. One of them is your thoughts are not your friends. So explain that one.
Well, I think there's nobody alive probably who doesn't sit there and go, well, what about this? What if I should have done that? I wish this happened. Yeah. Well, hey, you should say this. You shouldn't wear that. You look fat. And like we get into this mind swirl of crazy negative thoughts. And yes, we can try to pep ourselves up and all that. But I think one of the most important things to recognize is that automatic chatter. And that's what I mean by your thoughts. That automatic chatter is not on your side. And if you can, each of us, we can stop listening to that and stop empowering that, we will have some power in life. I think where we get astray is we react to that mind chatter as if it's true. Our thoughts, we relate to and react to our thoughts as if they're the truth. Just frightening territory. Like the truth of who you are wouldn't go, you're fat, you look ugly, you know what I mean? The truth of who you are would be like, you are the awesomest person ever. You can do anything with your life. Don't you think? I mean, isn't that like the truth of who you are? But that's not what the mind chatter does. It's like there to go, be safe, be small.
Yeah. It's like that whole thing about we're each so unique, like the fingerprint is unique, to we're as unique as the snow crystal, each one from each other. And yet, yeah, we don't have that happening. That comes out, I'm so unique, I'm so unique, But instead, it's like, oh, I'm not like them. I'm not the others enough. And it's crazy, isn't it?
Right. Yes.
Yes. Another one of your tenets in your book is you are designed to survive, not thrive. I've always believed that the purpose of life is to grow, not to be happy. Is that what you mean?
Well, here's what I mean. The fundamental way we're designed as like a human species is to survive. Like if you look at the cavemen, it's like, we'll procreate, we'll keep the species going, and we'll stay safe in the cave. But there's nothing fun to that. There's nothing there's nothing extraordinary to that. And I'm not saying we're cursed or anything like that, but I mean, if we confront our basic design, which is that if whoever made the species said, I want the species to continue over time. So I'm going to have it stay safe and keep close to home and not take risks and, all of those things that lead to a really boring life. And if we can recognize that and go, oh, that's self-chatter, for example. That's just one of the things that's designed to keep me safe, keep me close to the cave. Caveman speaking, back to that reference. It's designed to keep me perpetuating the species over time. It's not designed to keep you thriving and being extraordinary and all that. So if, as you're trying to, each of us, get out there in the world and make the difference we want to make, whatever that is, I think it's important to notice that the normal design is there to keep us small, and it's going to take working in concert with that to really be able to be extraordinary and thrive.
Okay, so the two concepts are related but very different, aren't they? So we're designed to survive, but if we take upon ourselves for our lives to be about growth and thriving, then we will end up being happy, I think.
Yes, and we can thrive, but it's an intentional choice as opposed to an
Yes.
automatic design deeply in the race way of being, like the survival.
Exactly. So it's a conscious decision you make. I'm going to thrive. Just as,
Yep.
People have the assumption, they sort of believe that life should be about my happiness, and when it's not, something's wrong. And so really, if you recognize all the experiences that come into our lives, as your grandmother said, God works in mysterious ways. We may not understand them, but if we just trust that they actually are there for our growth, for our good, that we will grow through them, and that we'll use them to our advantage and flourish in the end.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yes, amen to that. Woo!
Cool. All right. So we're on to your third tenet, which is you are responsible for everything that happens in your life. Everything. And so many counselors and therapists and government agencies even, they talk in terms of consoling victims and punishing perpetrators. And they describe rape and abuse and assault as something that is done to us, that happens to us. We're the innocent victims, as if we are not responsible at all. So how do you see the role of responsibility, in this? How, in these experiences that seem to come out of nowhere and hit us, happen to us. So how did you, for example, create that rape experience? How are you responsible for that? And do you feel therapists are sort of missing the point and therefore the opportunity in working with their clients? So that's like 4 questions in there probably.
Great. Yeah, really good. Thank you. So this fundamental tenet in my book, I think sometimes people go, "What? How dare you think that someone's responsible for a horror that happens to them?" And I'm not saying, what I mean by responsibility is not at fault. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about blame or shame or guilt or any of those ways that we sometimes hear the word responsibility. What I mean is it's an opportunity to take back the reins. What I mean is it's an opportunity to seize power. Because oftentimes when something like this happens to us, we feel like the world is spinning out of control when bad things happen, and we have no handle on it. We have no say in how things go because we were victimized. Somebody did this to us. And it's not saying that that's untrue. And like you'd said about the government agencies trying to punish the aggressors, and those things have to happen. In a civilized world, you can't just do this kind of stuff. And yet, in terms of healing, it's important, I believe, to seize responsibility in some regard, because the moment that we do, we have the ability to set ourselves free. So in my own example, in response to your question, when I was looking at, well, where am I responsible for this horror happening to me? And what I could see was this. I knew those guys were bad news. I knew they were bad news. They gave me the creeps. My friend told me not to go over my dead body and all that, she said. And I went anyway. And the moment I go, oh, not again, like blame or shame or guilt or wrongdoing or any of that. But I could go, oh, I did that. I can take responsibility for that. Yeah, I sure can. Then suddenly the mantle of responsibility, when it rests here, I'm like, oh, wait, I do have the power in what happens in my life. I'm not some hapless victim who life happens to. I do have intuition and I can use it. And I made a solemn vow to myself, I can use it from now on. But in that moment that we find something, some way to get a toehold in, it stops the experience of the world spinning out of control. We now have an opportunity to say, I am the master of my life, and I can have a say in how things go. And if, as a matter of fact, the say in how things go. It's an opportunity, that tenet, to wrest control back from life seemingly spinning out of control.
That's a wonderful answer. This is just so rich, so wonderful.
Thank you.
There is something that you said in your TED talk. Are you getting a bit of echo?
Just a wee bit. I don't know what's causing it. Anyway.
I don't know either. Hopefully that will go. All right. There is something that you said in your TED talk about wabi-sabi. So I'd love to ask you a two-pronged question. One is, how do you feel about your attackers now? And the other one is, what was it about the wabi-sabi story that is a core and a key part of how you see this whole experience now?
In response to the question about how do I feel about the attackers now, I don't. And I don't mean that like, forget you, I don't think of it. But how I knew that the healing there was closure to that and real completion was when I got through that forgiveness process and I stopped thinking about them.
Mm-hmm. Just dissolved.
It doesn't come up. It's like the whole experience is in like one big piece, but it's not like I used to think, how am I going to get revenge against those guys? I'm going to turn the world against them. I'm going to become famous someday and I'm going to make everybody go get them. Just like fantasy after fantasy. Now I just don't. It's not where my focus is. My focus is on empowering people, which is an entirely different thing. We may not be able to stop bad things from happening, but we can certainly be powerful in the face of them.
Yes. Oh, I love
that. That's that question. And then the second one is about wabi-sabi. So I did go on to become a model. I was like, if I got through all this junk, I'm going to do it. So I did become one, and one of the things they do when you're a model is they send you all over the world. And I was in Japan, and I was still really a loner all the time at this point. I just would hang out and read by myself whenever I wasn't actually on a shoot. And so I was in the agency's office, and they've got this big long conference table in there that's made out of one like long solid piece of wood. It's thin at one end and wide at the other end, and it was beautiful, but it had all these like ridges and like the eyes of the wood left in and divots and nicks and dents and all that. And I was reading and rubbing my hand over one of the divots, and the old grandmother of the agent came in. She goes, "Oh, wabi-sabi." And I'm like, "What? You mean like wasabi, like on sushi?" And they're like, no, no, no. And then finally they told me what the grandmother and grandfather came in and told me what wabi-sabi means. They said, it's the most important of all the Japanese principles. Wabi-sabi states that anything, an object, can only be seen to be beautiful if it also is flawed or damaged. And so something can only be as beautiful as the flaws or damages on the other side that it has. It has to be like ugly in order to be pretty or another. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, no, wait, what? I mean, I'd never heard anything like that in my entire life. I mean, something, its flaws are what makes it beautiful. It can't be beautiful. I mean, it was like I had to wrap my head around it. I'm like saying it over again. And I got up and left just because it was kind of overwhelming me. And I thought, could that apply to people? And meanwhile, you know, like I said, I hadn't told anybody what happened because I thought I was so damaged and ruined. And then I started trying it on, and I have to say that was a real turning point. It's not only can wabi-sabi apply to people, but it does. I remember it was like all these stories of people started coming back to me where, you know, they, like where they had something unique about them. Like there was this, even at the time, as goofy as it sounds, this one model who had this one really high eyebrow, one low one, and I was like, I want to look like that. Now, mind you, if I look like that, I'd be going, "Oh my god, I look like a Picasso painting. I'm crazy. I have a crazy eyebrow." And I realized, oh, that's wabi sabi. It's like the imperfection that makes her beautiful. And I remember my mother telling me about this woman that she loved and thought was so beautiful, but she had this big gap in between her teeth. And my mom goes, oh no, that's what makes her so special. And I always thought, you're out of your mind. But then as I started really trying it on, I was like, huh. I remember I was reading more about wabi sabi and talking to the Japanese about it, and they said, live flowers have wabi sabi. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, because they'll die soon, so you love them an extra amount right now. And I just thought, I had never heard anything like any of that. And I started to take it on for myself and realized I too could be perfect in that imperfection. And I've never turned back. And that's the message I have for people is know and really take to heart that all those things that you think are wrong with you, just consider that those are actually the things that make you magnificent. Just consider it and let it kind of rattle around in your head for a while and try it on for size and see if life doesn't look differently from there. And look at the people you love most and admire most and look, they may have some quote flaws that you love and appreciate that you've never noticed it that way before. And what would life be like if you could appreciate those same things in yourself? Pretty extraordinary, I think.
It is pretty extraordinary. I love that. And it really comes back to what we were saying before as well about our uniqueness, so that those flaws and those little tweaky things, that is our uniqueness, isn't it? All our idiosyncrasies. I had my first love was a carpenter, a builder, and I remember he once found this bit of driftwood off the beach and made it into a jewellery box for my birthday, which I still have today. And when he gave it to me, he said a similar wabi-sabi thing, that it had all these knot holes and all of that sort of thing in it. And he said they called that honest in the trade. He said that's honest, the fact that it's like that. And I loved that, and everything that you're saying, it just rings really true. So you were just talking about people valuing their whole selves. Can you give some examples from work you've done with your clients, of how they've overcome challenges they've been facing?
Well, I'm just so blessed to have all kinds of people from all over the world that I've worked with. And there's, one woman it comes out in my memory, or in my mind rather, she was really trying to create a new business for herself, just kind of burned out, and we were looking at what she could create next. She's a really talented chef, and we were working together, and in the midst of it, and quite new, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It was very aggressive. It was kind of advanced. She was really young. Like, I mean, I don't know what you guys consider old and young, but the 30s is pretty young, I think. You'll find as you get older. That's young. And she was like, I don't know if I'm going to live or die. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be aggressive right back. I'm going to go in there and fight fire with fire. I'm going to get the mastectomies done, both sides. I'm just going to do it, and she said she started to freak out for a moment, but she remembered the work that we'd been doing, and she went and stood in front of the mirror and stood there and looked at herself and just kept talking like aloud, getting those kooky thoughts out of her mind, saying, okay, this is happening right now, and I can go any way with this, and I can say how life's going to go, and she just kept talking aloud, and she said she wouldn't leave the mirror until she sorted herself out, and I'm happy to say it's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, she's completely cancer-free. She's done just phenomenally well with her life, changed her whole career, to something she'd really been looking for in the first place, but always felt she was too shy to do. Like this has given her the courage. And she always says, if asked, the cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. It made me stop my job that I didn't like, stop my life that I didn't like, and get on track to becoming myself again. So you guys, I know you know you're not in your 30s yet, probably, but I would just say that spark that's within you, like why sometimes you notice like adults get like, oh, I don't want to, you think they get boring or whatever. It's just because a lot of junk keeps happening in life, and every time it does, like it's just a normal reaction. We kind of shut down and get smaller. You probably notice if you could look at your life, the things that have happened that have hurt your feelings or upset you, where you've done that yourselves. But if you notice over the course of a lifetime, that really can impact a person. But if you notice those things as they're happening and just kind of stop them in their tracks and don't allow yourself to be shut down. It's just not worth it. And it hurts you. It doesn't hurt the other people. So just keep being big and shining bright and being, noticing your own wabi sabi and being your awesome self, and just keep putting yourself out there. Someday, if people don't get it now, they'll get it. They'll know how amazing you are. But first, it usually starts with you getting how amazing you are. And don't listen to anybody who tries to tell you anything other than that. They are out of their minds and they don't know what they're talking about.
Love it. Love it. And it's a perfect link into the last couple of questions I want to ask you, which are about goals and specifically shining. Since we probably have a lot of girls listening and watching here, and some of them may want to be models, you talked about that you actually did achieve your dream of being an international model. Can you just share a little bit about modeling, and then perhaps just more generally about what to you are some of the X factors about achieving one's goals?
Yep. So as far as modeling goes, it's funny, like having been a model, I'm kind of like, meh. I mean, I don't want to ever discourage anybody's dreams, ever. Do whatever is in your heart. But I know for me, like I saw it as an avenue to something. Like it was an avenue to get out into the world. And I could have fulfilled that avenue in a number of ways. So if that's something you want to do, look to whatever it is. And I'm not just talking about modeling, but look to see what's behind that and what are the myriad of ways that you could fulfill the spirit of what's really behind what you're committed to. Because one of the things you find in life, like when I went to go model, they were all like, you're too short, you're too short, you're too old. I was like, too old? I'm a teenager. But they were, oh, well, you're not 5'11" and 12 years old. It was like, zoinks. But, people will always, not always, like, I don't mean people are bad, but there are things that will come up that may thwart you. People will say no to you or whatever. But if you could find what it is that you're meant to be doing in your heart and fulfill that will set you free in life. Now, as far as modeling itself goes, let's see, what could I say? Find obviously reputable people. There are reputable agents in every city. Don't. People say you have to pay for everything. No, you don't. Like photos and all that. No, you don't. A real agent, if they like you and want you, you don't have to pay for anything. They will put that all on their expense. Mm-hmm. So, but unfortunately, it's usually just like in big cities. Like, you probably have to go to a big city to do real modeling. Otherwise, they will charge you because it's not their real income. You have to be in like New York or Paris or Milan or London. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. So it is hard if you're a young girl, because you got to go to places like that and live there. So it's I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it, but if you want to do that, just know that you can. Like anything else, I more importantly want to leave you with that you can. As far as your goals go, I think what I said before is it. Know who you are. Mm-hmm. Don't let anybody dissuade you. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Not some guy, not somebody you're in love with, not anybody else. You hold your own center. Do that. Mm-hmm. Hold your own, be your own North Star. I mean, have your trusted advisors. By all means, have great relationships with your parents or your teachers or counselors or whomever that you know you can really trust, and build a network of those people you can really trust. Thank God for my family and my mom and dad. Thank God for them, my brother and sister. But build that for yourself. Build your own community. And that'll help you accomplish your goals more than anything. Have a strong community, a strong sense of self, and some kind of faith that serves you. And just know, trust your gut and know, and get out there and be the awesome people you're meant to be. Can't wait to hear what you accomplish. I can't wait.
That's wonderful. Wonderful advice, and very wise. I always sign the Mastery Club with the words act on your dreams. So honor your dreams and take action. Don't expect them to drop in your lap. You know, get out there and do something. So, yeah. So as a last question, what are Cheryl Hunter's dreams now? What have you got? What are you working on next?
Well, one of the things I realize, I've been leading seminars for and coaching individuals and working in schools and school, like delivering assemblies to schools all over the country and world and like that. But one of the things I realize is even it's just person by person or group by group. And I really want to make a big impact and have people realize that they're not their circumstances. I want to deliver this kind of message to everybody so the world is free and empowered no matter what happens in their lives. And so I really, my biggest intention right now is to do that through media. I'd love to have a TV show where I work with people and have them really see, kind of like the work that I've done in seminars week by week, do that, with, millions of people around the world per week, so that people can see how magnificent they are and really have a voice telling them that, as opposed to voices telling them whatever else the media says these days. That's what I'm committed to, is really doing this now through media.
Okay, well, I'm setting a goal that one day you'll be interviewing me on your TV show about what I've achieved.
Yes, brilliant.
Cool. Cheryl Hunter, thank you so much for your time and your generosity and your honesty, your openness and vulnerability in sharing your entire journey with us, with all its wabi-sabi. And all the wisdom and the growth that you've gained. You've given so many gems and pearls of wisdom here that everyone watching can carry with them forever, because we all know that things that we hear, things that are told to us, so many of the things that your grandmother said to you, they have stayed with you your whole life. So there are things that you've said just now in this interview that are going to stay with some of these people who are watching and listening to this interview for the rest of their lives. And that's your legacy. So thank you. I really appreciate your
My honor
generosity.
and pleasure. Thank you.